The reason why we have hope is that suffering and injustice and evil don't have the final word. Christ does.
I'm wondering, when we take all of this together, Alanzo, when we take like what we're talking about right now, but with the trauma, with the losses and the pain and all of these things that we've lived through, we put it all together. What do you see about God's character? Like, what do you think about God's character in relation to all of it?
Good, I think, is the word that comes to mind through it. So, when we're thinking about these things, so a lot of my work has to do with theology and philosophy. And basically, those things are, philosophy is thinking about the ultimate questions in life, and theology is a compound word that means logia and theos, the study of God, and we're thinking about who God is. And when we take these things together, that's really what I'm thinking about a lot of the time. And in philosophy and in theology, we're wondering, why would God allow these certain things? Injustice, evil, suffering. And there are things called theodicies and defenses in these worlds. So what does that mean? To put it very simply, theodicy is a reason why God would allow these sorts of things in our lives. And defense is a little bit less ambitious. It says this could possibly be a reason why this particular thing happens in God's good world. Now, those are helpful intellectually because they can say, well, even though you went through this traumatic thing, or you are just somebody with a tender heart and is just looking out into the world and says, God, why do you allow these things? And that's completely understandable. Lots of Bible characters ask that same question. These help us to intellectually say, okay, God can exist and these things can exist at the same time. It's not like it's impossible for these things to exist at the same time. And it's like, cool, man, like that helps. Okay, why on earth would I trust somebody that would allow that sort of thing? And I think that's where your question is more getting at. And the reason why I use the word good is because, you do need to go further than these intellectual responses of theodicy and defense. And when you go down further, every worldview has to do this, by the way. It's not just Christianity, it's Islam, it's Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, atheism, etc. But with what is so unique about the Christian worldview is incarnation. God becomes enfleshed and dwells amongst the suffering and participates in the suffering with us. That's part of God's love. You talked about participating in God's love earlier. That's what love does. It not only is with the sufferer in suffering, but participates in the suffering with the sufferer. And that's what we see in the heart of the gospel. So the reason I say good when I think about trauma and evil and all of these sorts of things, and when I'm thinking about God, is because even though I might not know exactly why my brother passed away, like why did he get cancer? He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, and all these things. I know that God is still good, though, because I'm leaning on the gospel, which is God came, God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son, and God perished in a unjust, traumatic execution, like so many people in our world do, that die in horrors. But the reason why I'm saying he's good, and the reason why he's hope, because it's not enough that God just suffers with us, eh? Like if Jesus just suffered, then Jesus would only be comfort. Comfort's great, I'll take that. But it doesn't give me hope. The reason why Jesus Christ offers hope is because that which tried to swallow him up, which is what suffering, trauma, evil, these things will swallow you whole if you let them, or sometimes when people afflict us with them, is that the horrors that tried to swallow up Christ were defeated when he rose from the grave. So the reason why we have hope is that suffering and injustice and evil don't have the final word. Christ does, because he came out the other side. So that's why when you asked about the nature of God, good is the first word that comes to mind.
It can certainly feel at times when I'm thinking back, gosh, and the stories that I hear, it can feel at times, y'all, for anyone who's watching, listening to this later, that it is swallowing us up. It can feel like it's going to. And I had just commented to someone that there were times where I felt like I had just enough where like my nose tilted up was just above water. So I wasn't quite going to drown. And like you just said, Alonzo, we don't, because it's not the whole story. It's not the ending. It's not the finale. And when I think about what I have so desperately needed to know, when I've thought about the problem of evil, when I thought about suffering and why is the world even designed this way to begin with, which will be my next question for you. But when I've thought about all of those things, I'm like, ultimately, so much happens in life. Like bad things happen. We get hurt. We have losses. There's injustices. It can all be unfair, all of these things. And I'm like, at the end of all of it, if I go all the way down, what is it really that I am needing to know from the Lord? And I'm needing to know that I'm loved. And I'm needing to know that there's hope that it won't always be this way. And those are the two things you're talking about.